Welcome to the Center for Collaborative Leadership. My name is Lisa DeAngelis. I am the director of the center, and I am pleased today to be able to give you a sense of the relationships that we talk about, those purposeful relationships that are part of the purpose of the center. And so when we talk about collaborative leadership, this is really how do you identify the resources that you need in order to be able to get the work done that you need done. And I had the opportunity to hear from two of our recent graduates who were able to really identify for us how they put collaborative leadership into action. So I'd love to have them first introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the story of how they worked together and created some meaningful change. Nick, I'll start with you. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Lisa. I'm Nick Duncan from Tufts Medical Center in Boston. We're going to talk about COVID. So for the COVID-19 response here at Tufts Medical Center, I was the Deputy Incident Commander for the institution and Waldron organization, which is 3-member hospital. So over 12,000 employees, and we serve over about 11,000 patients.
Thank you so much, Nick. Mia?
So I'm Mia-Healy Waldron. I am the Senior Manager of Aviation Programs and Policy at the Massachusetts Port Authority. So we'll talk about this, but a lot of the personal protective equipment that the area hospitals use have come through Logan Airport, which is where I work.
And so we were incredibly fortunate to have both Mia and Nick in the 2020 Emerging Leaders Program together, though I believe that you had never met, nor would you have had the opportunity to meet had it not been for this program. So what I will do now is I'm going to turn it over to Nick to start telling the story, not only of how you two came to know one another through the program, but also why did it matter?
Great, thanks, Lisa. So I think to start off, we started the program the week long, and Mia and I never really sat together. We were just colleagues in the class, which was great. Met through other friends that were in the class and continued to grow our relationship through that. But it really started when the program went virtual and my job kind of flipped from day-to-day operations at the medical center to fully COVID-19. We found ourselves in a serious pinch when we were bottlenecked for surgical masks. So the blue mask you see most patients wearing in hospitals, we were down to last couple hundred, so that would last us a few days. And I got a call from my supply chain VP saying, they're at Logan Airport. Who and what can you do for me? And I was more than happy. And I looked through the list and I remember Mia worked there. So funny now, but looking back, I emailed Mia, but I said the wrong name because I was talking to another person named a very similar name. And Mia responded, was like, are you talking to me? And I'm like, yes, please call me. And I called Mia. We had a 5-minute conversation about here's the situation and what can you do for me? And she was more than happy to help. It's interesting because the 375,000 masks that Mia was able to push through the program probably saved 500,000 lives. If you think about one, protecting the employee, protecting the staff member, protecting the patients, and then also protecting their families. Because if that staff member becomes sick and they go home and bring it to other people, what does that really look like? And you never think about that until you're on the other side and you're like, how many masks can actually save lives? So Mia was right there in the middle, jumped right in, and I wouldn't have had that relationship without the center because I was able to get her name wrong, pick up the phone, but she knew I was doing this out of the best possible manner I could to get it done fast and have that trust and relationship that made it possible. So that's my side of the story, and I'll let Mia kind of give her side of the story real quick.
That seems fair. Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Lisa, for doing this. I have to agree with everything Nick said. It was it's been so great meeting everyone in the program, but it's really interesting when we see these connections happen. Massport and Tufts, we both work in industries that safety is the paramount priority. So we share this sort of collective interest in, the same type of. So when I got the email from Nick, yes, I was a little bit confused at first. I was like, I know this person, but I think that he has the name wrong. Like maybe he's not talking to me. But of course, to round out his story, he was looking for me, and the connection there was, was just great. The fact that he was able to reach out and, he knew that I was going to be able to help him with all of this is a testament to the relationship that we had built. And then on my side, I was able to work with my colleagues and our partner here, who was the one carrying your shipment, and really expedite that package. So it really all worked out really well, and being in the class made all the difference.
So you both are being incredibly humble right now when you're talking about the impact of the work that you're doing, not only within your organization, but across organizations. Right? This interaction that the two of you had was important, as was the conversations that had to happen internally to actually make things happen. Right, Nick, that VP had to know that he could look to you to make things happen. Right? Go get it done. You can figure this out. And then Mia, you had to know who to turn to and what relationships you could call on to actually make this happen. So I'm going to turn it back to both of you for just a moment to talk a little bit about your leadership within your organizations.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. It's definitely been interesting. My day-to-day role here at the organization is a pretty front-facing operations manager in the middle of a busy organization. And then when COVID hit, we built an organization structure around the staff that have been in the beginning of it leading the charge. So my chief operating officer and myself were those two people. And when they looked to us, they said, you guys are the most knowledgeable, you have the most connections and can get the most things done very quickly. So it's an honor to be kind of at the top of the pyramid and have those relationships, but I wouldn't have been able to do those things without the relationships built outside of that structure between the center and all the other relationships I have through different coalitions or organizations I work through, because that's important, because when rubber meets the road and things are going on, you don't have time to really sit down and have a conversation about who you are and why it's important. It's important to have those already pre-existing relationships to work forward from. And that was on full display when I was able to talk to Mia and push that through. And it was like two conversations. So it was no back and forth. It was, here's the information. Okay, I found it. It's here. It'll be here tomorrow. And it was like, thanks so much. I'll talk to you next week whenever I have some time to myself. So it was super great to have that, because otherwise I would have been going through 20 different people to try to get to Mia, essentially, to get the information needed to make that happen. So that's kind of how the relationship worked out, where everything was pre-existing, which made a whole difference.
Yeah, definitely. I knew exactly, who to go to and the carrier here. And again, we have a really good relationship with them to start with. But something I wanted to mention that I thought was important in this situation was something that we actually learned in class, which is always very edifying to know, like, hey, we learned this thing in class and then it really happened in real life. Was that just ability to be vulnerable, right? And to a degree, it was vulnerable for Nick to pick up the phone and say, we need help, we can't figure this out and we've tried, and so now we're reaching out to you. And in the same way for me to turn around and then go to these people who I work with and say, this is an important issue. It's a vulnerable situation. So I think that having that relationship between Nick and myself, and then myself and my colleagues, I think that is really what helped get this done. And I think for myself, I feel very fortunate for my position within aviation. And I think that I've gained some respect by being someone who's vulnerable and approachable, which is a leadership skill that we've learned is really one of the most important ones you can have.
And that vulnerability on both of your parts actually became the strength, right, that allowed you to move things forward. It wasn't walking in and trying to knock down walls or demand something. It was actually thinking through the long term, right? What is the relationship I want to maintain, and what do I need to get done? And how are both true, and how can I serve both? Wow, good on you. So, any last thoughts or reflections on this story? Because I think it's just amazing what you two have done.
Yeah, I'll just say that I think Mia hit on the head. Like, you learn all these things in class, but then how do you recognize it when things happen, right? Like, I'm in the middle of what will go down as probably my career cornerstone of building off of pandemic preparedness and response and going through it. And to know that in the middle of that, I could just turn to someone who I knew for 5 months, probably had maybe one full work week of interaction, 40 hours with, and say, you're saving lives you don't even know. And like, how does that mean to like me to say, like, this is my job, like, I'm reaching out to you and I trust you and your ability to get it done, no questions asked. Those are the relationships that really help you as a leader kind of leverage your relationships and also show people you're willing to put it all out there and say, like, I trust this person enough, they're going to get it done for me, so you better have faith in everything I'm about to do. I think that's just like something that like you can't learn in school. You only can learn after the fact and say, look, I did that, I learned, this is what I really put on the line and made come true.
Sorry, just going off mute there. Um, yeah, I think that I would just finish by saying when we went into the class, seeing the title of the ELP, the Collaborative Leadership, I thought, okay, this is going to be a class on figuring out how to work with people better. But that was a component of it, right? But I think that the more important part was this learning how to identify in each other strengths that we all have. And I think, right off the bat, I actually missed the first class, which was, I think, unfortunate because people sort of figured each other out in that first day. But I made up for it fully on day 2, getting to know Nick. And I think I recognized right from the get-go that Nick is the type of person who is very candid and honest and someone who, again, I learned would ask for help, but someone who I feel like I could ask to help me as well. So I would just leave this with saying, I think that everything was about learning how to work with people more, but also identifying in each other the strengths that we all have that we should be utilizing and connecting with each other to, improve everything that we do in our own lives and industries and jobs.
And the lovely thing that I can say, having seen just a few cohorts go through the program, is that these relationships really last well beyond the end of the program, right? This isn't a program that you go through for 9 months. You sit at the tables with folks and then you go, oh yeah, I sort of remember who was in my cohort. It was fun today to actually see a posting on LinkedIn where someone from an earlier cohort posted the picture of the front of their directory with their pictures on it and said, I remember my cohort fellows, and started tagging them in LinkedIn. And so that's the community you build, and it just keeps spidering out. Right? So if that conversation with Mia had needed to have yet another person involved, it's her network that you're now calling into play. And that transcends the different sectors and the different industries, and really does allow us to move things forward. So I am incredibly grateful that you chose to share this story with me. I'm not sure that you knew when you did what would happen immediately following that, but I thank you for trusting me to be able to play this forward. I really want folks to understand this is not just a theoretical exercise to go through this program, it's a different way of being. And I think you've both exemplified that. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.